Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ivan Rodrigues, and on behalf of ETH, I would like to welcome all of you to this ET Unwired session titled Journey Towards Building a Data-Driven Organization, powered by Microsoft and PwC. Thank you for joining us today. As we embark on a journey towards data-driven banks to assist us in making informed decisions, profitably serving customers, proactively managing risks, and streamlining operations, it is critical to ensure that data platform solutions are robust and available to meet a variety of information requirements. It is about time we align business outcomes with actionable data-driven insights and develop a culture of acting on data and generating insights to benefit the bank's many stakeholders. And to discuss this, we have some distinguished speakers with us today from various backgrounds across industries. So, without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, Mukesh Deshpande, Financial Services Data and Analytics Leader, Partner, PwC India, to give us an industry outlook through the industry keynote. Over to you, Mukesh.
Thank you, Ivan, for the introduction. Very excited to be here and talk about the topic which is very close to my heart, the entire journey towards building the data-driven bank. I lead the Financial Services Data Analytics team as part of PwC India Data Analytics team. And as part of my role, we talk to many banks, many financial services institutes, and talk about how they can use the asset that they're holding for quite long, which is the data, and getting generated, getting created day by day, how they can use the best for their own growth, for their own advantage. And that is where this entire thought process of how do we build a bank which is driven by data, which is driven by insights, and can really utilize that to their fullest potential. While this is happening, we looked at market and find out certain ways or certain trends that are currently there in the market. And if you really look at it, the way currently banks are going to market, the way banks are interacting with customers, the way banks want to address the queries and the questions raised by the regulators, this is all kind of revolved around data. And it starts with, again, building a data ecosystem. Now, if you really look at it, it is not just the bank, right? There are multiple other fintechs which are coming together, a lot of other alliances that are currently happening. And banks are kind of intertwined with all these coming together and kind of providing services to their customers. How do you kind of make use of this entire data ecosystem? Do you have a data platform with which you can actually keep looking at the data that is flowing through your system, identify the insights out of it, and then accordingly respond back to the customer in a real-time basis? So this entire handling data ecosystem in a very efficient manner is one of the trend that we are currently seeing that everybody is kind of wants to hop onto. Hyper-personalization, real-time engagement is those needs were always there, but now probably it has become more relevant because for all ETB customers as well as NTB customers, you every time wants to look at the kind of transactions they are doing, the kind of behavior they are showing in multiple channels, in multiple digital instruments that you have, and how do you kind of adopt those insights generated and then accordingly respond back to customer is something which is very important. And hence entire hyper personalization has gone to the next level, and that is where I think usage of these data platforms is becoming much more important. AI driven banking is also on the rise, be it your chatbots, be it your FAQs, be it your uh, intelligent automation more from the customer acquisition perspective, customer service perspective. All these needs a strong background from the data platform perspective. And if you have that data platform, then ultimately uh, giving a better customer experience through AI enabled services and technologies is something which is very important. Having said all that, I think what is very important is basically the entire risk management area, right? Your CRO team, your entire compliance team is kind of looking at ensuring that while you are addressing different segments of customer, while you are taking different kinds of products to the market, at the same time, this entire risk is kind of managed. The compliance is kind of handled pretty well. We are having required tools and technologies to respond back to regulators' queries, and hence this entire proactive risk management also becomes very important. How do you kind of ensure that all the queries raised by regulators can be answered quickly, efficiently, and you have the data platforms ready to kind of respond to that? Hence, that is also another trend that we are seeing where multiple banks ensuring that the entire risk management has now a proactiveness attached to it, and probably the entire data platform is kind of behind it, supporting it. APIification is also another trend that we are seeing. This is basically building on top of the trend of simplifying or lightening the core. Many of the time now, entire consumers set expect a real-time view to all the transactions that are happening on your mobile devices or any digital channels. And if that has to happen, either bank has to build those interfaces directly with your core banking applications or your core applications where these transactions are happening, or basically you can again look at a real-time data platform wherein these data sets or transactions can be replicated and can be further pushed into your digital devices using many different types of API technologies, right? And hence, I think this entire APIification is also becoming a very relevant, very important. And many of the banks are actually looking at how they build this entire API layer on top of their data platform, which then can feed into analytics, which then can feed into your digital channels, which then can feed into your entire various customer interaction channels that you have. Another important aspect is basically your kind of innovation that you're trying to drive on top of your data platform. Be it a TinyML, be it a federated learning, be it a knowledge graphs, how well you can use the data platform that you have, which kind of includes data from the entire enterprise-wide applications and kind of run multiple different types of innovative tools and technologies and algorithms on top of it, which now helps bank to kind of enhance further, identify different kind of product sets, identify different kind of customer segments, where we can very specifically look at customers and try and find out how do we kind of deal with their own requirements. Moving ahead, I think banks are at multiple level of maturity, right? Some banks have gone ahead and kind of built this entire data platform and through which they are servicing all their units, servicing all their customers, servicing all their products basically. But some banks are still taking those steps, right? And some banks who are trying to kind of modernize their entire data infrastructure, trying to probably adopt cloud more from the agility perspective, more from higher computing power perspective. Those banks are kind of in a way towards or in a journey towards becoming a data-driven bank. There are multiple reasons why banks should start thinking and why they are taking these kind of journey, right? I think it gives you a good platform to work on the entire customer experience engagements and how you can kind of improve their customer experience indexes there, how you can actually attract a new generation customers towards your products, your services. So I think that is where this entire data-driven bank initiatives are very important. You can entirely accelerate your digital journey, right? Digital is a broader word, right? And multiple things happens as under the digital adoption perspective for that matter. But data plays a very important role in terms of enabling all these digital channels or enabling all these digital initiatives and kind of access it to its fullest potential. And hence, I think to ensure that your digital initiatives become successful, you need to have this data layer at back end of it. And hence, probably again, that's another reason why banks should start doing that. The entire quality of life from the employee's perspective is probably where we have seen a lot of rise in that, because now this data is available on your fingertips. People really don't need to work on managing, curating, going to the data, and basically then spend a little time on the actual work that they were supposed to do. But with this entire approach of data driven bank and the kind of platforms that one can build, this entire way by which the employees can utilize that data and then service their customers has becoming much more important. And again, probably regulators is another reason why banks should really look at it. And once you do that, right, then your multiple teams or basically multiple units are kind of enabled from this entire data driven approach, right? Be it your front office, be your entire interaction journey towards your customer, be it your product management group and the way they are using it, defining what kind of products needs to be published and used and things like that. Your entire support functions, be it HR, be it finance, be it treasury, whatever those support functions, those are kind of enabled. Your technology team is now in much more control to kind of support you for all the initiatives. And these are the reasons why typically banks take data-driven approach and then kind of work through that, right? Here is a very quick framework that basically says in terms of how all this comes together. If you look at the top layer talks about these various themes, various principles, various trends that bank want to adopt, right? Be it an APIfication, be it building the data trust within the bank, be it basically AI or IA powered banking or sense on response technology. These could be various themes that banks wants to kind of implement and banks wants to show. And again, adoption of those themes or principles across your multiple business capabilities, be it your business units on asset banking or liabilities or lending or fee income based products. Everywhere you want to ensure that these themes are kind of implemented, be it your functions for that matter, operation or finance or HR or risk. There also you want to ensure that all these themes, be it a sense and response, be it a single source of truth, or basically a BI democratization, all that kind of adopted there. And again, across life cycle of the customer, right? Be it acquisition, be it a retention, be it a growth of the customer, you want to ensure that everywhere, every function, every interaction, every initiative that you take there is kind of supplemented by the data-driven platforms. And then to make that happen, there are certain capabilities that your platform should have. And again, that is where this entire journey comes into picture. Whether you have your traditional technologies, traditional data infrastructure, whether you're modernizing that, whether you're cloudifying it or going onto the cloud, do you have ability to address all of these capabilities, be it optimized data architectures, whether it's AI/ML workbench, the entire data governance aspects on top of it, more from the data privacy perspective, data security perspective, ownership perspective, data or analytics as a service capabilities, again, your scalability, agility, I call it as a star rating scenarios. So this is a framework which basically tells you in terms of how one can really go about doing this. I'm going to wrap up in a minute or so by just talking about these two approaches. And these two approaches basically is where we have seen multiple banks taking up while doing their data-driven banking journey, right? The first approach that we call it as a BEAT, which is a business-enabled analytics transformation. During this journey, right, there is a thought process where banks wants a quicker ROI. Bank wants to kind of support to their functions by actually supporting by analytical use cases. And hence what they start with a smaller use cases directly. So they define the entire design, they define the entire architecture, but they really don't wait for the entire data platform to be built. They start probably a very specific use cases, be it a customer 360, be it a lead analytics, be it a lead enrichment, be it a payment analytics, these are the different, very specific use cases that banks can start, which will help units, which will help their customers to get into it. So this is an approach that we call it as a beat. With a beat approach, over a time period, your actual data lake or your actual data platform gets built. There are certain banks who take other approach, which we call it as a DAT, right? This data-driven analytics transformation, wherein the approach there is to build the COE, approach there is to build the data platform upfront, ensure that all the enterprise data is gathered together, it is managed well in the data platform, it is managed in a cloud-based data platform or on-prem data platform, kind of put a data governance on top of it. And once you have a very rich data platform there, now that's the time when you start building your use cases on top of it, because then the journey becomes pretty easy. Then your timeline to kind of make a use case live is a very shorter, because the entire data as required in an accessible format, in an API based format, is all available there. And then building use cases on top of it becomes a pretty straightforward and easy use case. So these are the two different approaches that we have seen, beat and DAT. Many banks, based on their approach, based on their banking culture, they decide which approach to take. But both approach gives you the required benefits. Both approach helps you to complete this journey at one point in time and become a very data-driven bank. Now, with that, I'm going to take a pause here. Again, Ivan, back to you.
Thank you for those real data insights in terms of how you can build a data-driven bank. And that was a great industry perspective. I think it serves as a wonderful backdrop for the discussions to follow. So now I would like to invite Makran Jadhav, Director, Data and AI Solutions Team, Microsoft, for the partner keynote. Makran, the virtual floor is all yours.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here and sharing the virtual platform, as Ivan said, with all of you all and the participants. I'm going to just share my screen quickly and get started. All right. I think Mukesh said a great backdrop for the conversation we are having. Really fantastic approaches that he talked about. I like both the way he captured that. And I would like to, add or build upon what he said so that we are having a productive discussion out over here. I've been fortunate enough to, be in the data analytics space for considerable time, and that helps me link a few things which we can learn from and build better data-driven organizations, as is the topic for today. So let me start with that, right? And I think in this picture out over here, we are trying to capture, how the banks have evolved over the last few years. Mukesh, rightfully identified some of the new elements that have come in. I think if you look at the last 10 years, many of the banks have started their data journey, creating a data warehouse. Creating the data warehouse, building MIS, providing data support systems, and that has taken them to a certain level of data journey, right? So today it is not uncommon to see that we have very insightful reports, analysis being presented to all the stakeholders within the bank, including risk, including retail banking. But the next step is to really take towards an experience which is immersive across the banking channels for the customer, right? With that, the second aspect, before I go into more details, is clearly, as Mukesh also pointed out, there has been a dramatic change in how banking has evolved in the last 2 to 3 years, right? Especially around how the partnership model, the banking ecosystem has changed. Whereas the recent upcoming of, let's say, digital banking, fintech partners have really made a bank far more data, not just data oriented, but generator of data, right? Because there are so many different partners, because they are now becoming more digital, the amount of data being generated is definitely far larger. And therefore, the opportunity to make more solid use of it, right? And I'm going to again move ahead a little bit and talk about what are the key areas where we can put data to use, right? And what are the key? And this is where I would request your attention, because I think that is the whole purpose of today's discussion as to how we can drive our journey towards data. So some of the key areas that I'm finding data warehouses, data-driven organizations is these. I was talking along with a retail banking CIO just a week ago, and he made this, really bold statement saying that guys, no longer is core banking my system of record. And I was, really alarmed. And I said, sir, what do you mean? He said, somehow the pace at which we are growing, the core banking systems have not been able to adopt. We are putting payments on top of it. We are putting CMS on top of it, further slowing it down. If I need to trust data, actually today, data warehouse has become the system of record. There are so many things that happen outside the core banking that eventually, if I need to know what has happened, I today go to the data warehouse or the data repository or the data lake, as the case may be. And it was really a aha moment saying that, yes, over the last 10 years, how organizations have changed or evolved in their data journeys. This probably is a moment which says from a system of probably reporting, today a data warehouse is a system of record. And when we go a little bit deeper, if it is the system of record, it can become the system of differentiation. And some of the great examples Mukesh talked about, and a few others that I'm sure the participating banks here are already adopting. If data is available and that is system of record, what more we can do so that we differentiate ourselves in the market. So that is my first theme. View progress to making your data warehouse or data lake to a system of record or just a system of reporting. Second, as we have transitioned in this journey, a lot of focus initially was around retail banking, right? How do I cross-sell? How do I upsell? How do I get a 360-degree view of Makaran Jadhav as the retail bank account holder? I've also noticed, however, in the last 2 years, corporate banking has also been now to the forefront of leveraging data, which earlier was not the case, right? So some of the examples, with one bank, we have developed an early banking or early warning signal, right, for corporates, where the bank, along with a solution provider, takes data from external sources like Ministry of Corporate Affairs, like external corporate information providers, and trying to predict if the corporates who have taken a loan with us are likely to default. Right? I think that's an excellent use case which till now was not as adequately looked at. Secondly, there's another bank who's trying to identify relationships between the parties who have taken loans from them. So am I a supplier to someone, and if that purchaser is actually in a good position or not, and will that impact me as a supplier and my ability to repay? Right? Third example is about creating bots or service channels even for corporate customers, not just the retail ones, so that the RMs can be more focused on high value tasks. I think we will see, and I will expect banks now to support corporate banking more and more from a data analytics perspective. Third, again, AI is a very practical theme which has arrived today, and I see that both in terms of onboarding and in terms of customer service. There are some examples around customer service, especially around contact center analytics, where organizations are able to improve the quality of support that me as an end customer gets by A, analyzing the sentiments, B, analyzing the performance of the agents, guiding the agents real time as to how they could support their customers while they are talking, and lastly, escalating real time or near real time to the seniors if the call is not getting resolved. Right? I think these were things which 2 years ago we were just dreaming of, but today AI has made it possible, so that our onboarding as well as our continuous servicing becomes a near frictionless experience. Super app. I'm sure many of you would have read about this, right? But if I put a context of banking, some of them have, some of them are starting their journey. So what do I mean by super app? We have mobile app, right? Super app has two contexts. First and very near term is if I am a banking conglomerate which has subsidiaries offering services in insurance or offering services in mutual funds, can I provide an app which is cohesive across those lines of businesses, right? Second perspective, can I provide complementary services with third parties along with my core app as a value add service to my customers, which can mean some income to me, but largely from a customer perspective, right? This is, not very simple, not very complex, but it requires coming together of different entities from both processes and technical perspective. But you'll find that as a bank, having this application is going to lead you to more insights and being therefore be able to more closer to your customer. That is my fourth area. And the last area is around sustainability. This is really extremely new. As we proceed, we will see corporates getting more and more aware about the sustainability objective, the ecosystem, the carbon footprint, the waste management, the electronic waste management, and how can we ensure that the data that gets driven through those initiatives also becomes a part of a data lake or the data warehouse, which is reported for corporate governance perspective. So to summarize, has your data lake become the system of record? Are you making it the system of differentiation? Second, what is the support the data lake is offering for corporate banking? What more can be done in those areas? Third, AI, use of AI for onboarding as well as for customer service. Fourth, super app, which can provide multiple complementary services to the end customers in a single application. And last, your sustainability initiative. Those were the areas that I want you to ponder about and say, okay, what amongst this have I done? Where are we in terms of maturity and how can we move ahead? I'm going to close my discussion with two case studies which talk about how new age banks are utilizing data and analytics for business purposes. The first is around, let's call it, it's not specifically a bank, but it's an NBFC, right? Today, it's really large, established, both in terms of market presence and the innovative products that it has brought to the market. But it was not always the case a couple of years back. Legacy systems, legacy data processing systems were inhibiting how they could innovate faster, right? And you can see their lack of innovation was a key point. Second, once we looked at the solution, it has been an evolution. Today, it is an integrated data warehouse and data lake, which means it also has unstructured data coming into it. And it's growing at a phenomenal rate. A key platform that have been brought in, as you can see there, the loan management system, the core system, which is in this case is FinOne, deposits, a variety of them. Most importantly, what have been the benefits, right? Clearly, extremely heavy cross-sell and upsell ratio, extremely flexible and agile in terms of how they introduce new products. And I'm going to move on to the next slide to talk just about that from a business orientation perspective. So this is, their way of utilizing data across the life cycle. And while the headlines might not be different, I'll share some insights which make it really, really exciting. So one, prospecting. Because they're an NBFC, they have to rely a lot on other partners to gather prospect information, prospect list. What they're doing smartly is enriching that data with risk scores, which I think is a really smart thing to do. Today, if they add the customer, prospect, and enrich data, they have more than 500 data points about every single prospect that they are targeting to create the profile of the customer across years, of course. But that is the depth that they are trying to go to, which they are using for predicting risks about the customer, which means should I make an offer unsecured loan to Makran or no? Right? Of course, there is a lot of science behind it. The velocity is something we can't depict on the screen. But if I pass that, then it goes to a loan management system where the tracking starts. If I have secured the loan and I've agreed for it, collections. Within collection, again, the predictability which says, what is my predictability of not paying on time? Getting data again from third-party systems. And innovation. The next is the innovation part, which I think is smart, which says, okay, given this information and analysis, how can we tweak the products for seasonality, for when I say seasonality, I meant festivity, right? Sorry about that. Leading to cross-sell, upsell, and a continuous cycle. And I think this is the grain which is exciting, and the speed at which they do really makes it outstanding. I'm going to close out on a more traditional case study where a new age bank had a data processing engine which was not as shaping up to their fast requirements. That is where Microsoft Azure came in and helped them reduce the fragmented data, help them create better security of the data, leading to better NPA management, better risk management, and a better customer wallet share, if not the entire 360-degree view. Right? It is always a journey. Number one, as rightly is titled to today's topic. But the key points to note here are that the velocity of data ingestion, the velocity of providing information to the users, the velocity of getting more data processed is something that is requiring a change in how we process these data. And there are more case studies I could talk about, but I would like to summarize at this point and hand it back to Ivan for the next discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Makarand, for your insightful session. Some great slides that were put up, and again, once again, both yours and Mukesh's presentation serve as a wonderful backdrop for the panel to follow. We wish you and Microsoft the very best going forward. With this, ladies and gentlemen, let's move now to an exciting segment, which is the panel discussion. And it is an honor and privilege to first welcome our panelists. First up, we have Atul Kumar, General Manager and Chief Information Officer, Canara Bank. Praveen Kumar Sharma, Chief Technology Officer, Union Bank of India. And Makarand Jadhav, Director, Data and AI Solutions Team, Microsoft. This panel will shed light on building a data-driven bank, and the discussion will focus on how PSU banks can leverage data to serve their customers better and be more competitive. And to moderate this discussion, I would like to once again call upon Mukesh Deshpande, Financial Services Data and Analytics Leader, Partner, PwC India. The virtual floor is all yours, Mukesh.
Thank you, Ivan, for initiating this interesting panel discussion. We heard some industry trends. We heard what does a data-driven banking means. Then we heard about from the leading cloud service provider in terms of how they are helping banks to kind of modernize this entire data infrastructure. But now I think it is a time to hear in terms of how actually banks are doing it, right? Because I think there are challenges which are coming, which are multifold. There is a customer whose expectations are changing. They are becoming more digital savvy, and they are expecting a lot from banks. That's one side of the equation. Other side of the equation, where banks, PSU banks, are kind of collecting data from left, right, and center, right? I mean, huge transactions happening. There is a merger of 3 banks that are happening, and both the panelists that we have here have addressed those challenges there, where probably now they are dealing with the sea or oceans of the data that is there in their organization. So let me start with Mr. Atul Kumar and ask this question, saying, I'm sure you would have a lot of challenges when 3 banks came together, their data infrastructures. how are you ensuring that you can still utilize that data and kind of address these new demands of the customers that are there? How you're going about it, sir?
Yeah, Mr. Mukesh, first of all, thank you very much to Mr. Makaran and you for a nice presentation, which was above sea level. So I will like to talk on the earth level, what exactly is happening. The PSU banks readily cannot be compared with, a new generation private sector or a multinational bank. See, for example, Canara Bank established in 1906 and ICICI Bank is started from 1994. So you can understand the kind of legacy, PSU banks hold in terms of data. At that point of time when account was to be opened, nothing was required probably. Even a photo was not required. You could just go to a branch and open an account. And, again, the manual, ALPM, TVM, CBS, and now you are talking about data warehouse. My submission here is that in IT industry particular, we change technology so fast. By the time it gets implemented, something new comes. And here I will blame probably Mr. Makaran that he was earlier in Teradata and he implemented Teradata in multiple banks. And what happened? It could not give the kind of result by the time now he has moved over to Data Lake. So the technology is changing so fast and it is so complex to implement those technologies that the real benefit of those are not coming. Here I will compliment Microsoft just to give you an insight. We are using Power BI dashboards. They are so effective and they are really so interactive and we are able to get those things I will say done in a very, very less time. Means I can generate a Power BI dashboard in maybe a week's time, a complex dashboard. Whereas if you talk about data warehouse, I will tell you, taking all the source system to a single data warehouse itself is taking years. I'm sure Praveen is there to supplement me because he is also the user of data warehouse. So my request to the IT industry particularly is that let us divide this kind of big I would say solutions into small segments so that it can be really implemented in a faster manner and management can see the ROI and the benefit. Otherwise, today management feels, "Arey, aap 1 saal, 2 saal mein kya kar rahe ho?" So the things are totally different on the ground. So my request and appeal to the IT fraternity will be that we should be given such a solution which is easier to implement and which is easier to see the ROI. And again, the users, they are totally different. PSU bank structure, you cannot really compare with a new generation private sector bank, where most of the people they are techies and they can understand things much better and faster than a person working in PSU bank who is basically a banker or maybe a chartered accountant, whose main focus is finance and not technology. So I think there is a huge journey. I think there is a long way to go to really get into that kind of solutions which can be implemented, which are, of course, data is most important for any bank today, whether it is public sector bank or private sector bank. And of course, public sector bank is scored little less here because we have the legacies data and which enrichment is not that easy. Of course, I think more or less every bank is doing it, but of course, it is going to take some time. So that is my initial remark on your PSU bank journey.
Thanks, Mr. Abdul Kumar. I think 2 points very well made. One is basically the advancement in technology that is happening. How do we kind of keep pace with that? And second one is, I think any initiative that you take, how do you kind of show a quick ROIs of those initiatives, right? So probably very similar to the BEAT approach that I talked about in my presentation, but I think that is something which is very important. I would also like to hear the similar thoughts on the similar question from Mr. Praveen Kumar. Sir, over to you, Mr. Praveen.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mukesh and Makaran, and thanks, Atul sir. It's a really pleasure to be there, to be part of your team. So as Atul sir has mentioned, see, we are public sector banks and running a legacy, and even after amalgamation, the legacy is becoming 300 years. So the banks like us, which has been got amalgamated with 2 other banks. And fortunately, both the banks who has got amalgamated are also 100 years. So if I see the legacy goes to 300 years, and the data and the kind of the demographies which are available are in we are really sitting with a huge pile of the data. But yes, How much is useful? That is also another point of concern. Though a lot of corrections, a lot of efforts has gone, and we are at the point where we are fighting with the new generation private banks or the payment banks. We are no less than any of the private banks, though they are 20 years or 25 years of the old banks. But we are ready and we are there to fight it, and we are continuously fighting. So fighting or we are joining the hands to take the business. Both are going ahead. But the major point, the change in technology is one, where you are changing from the whether it's a data warehouse or data mart, then data warehouse, then data lake, or something may come tomorrow. But another part is where the source system, the upgradation of the source system is also very frequent. Now, if I have upgraded, if I have integrated for the ETL to go to the data to the data warehouse, and then I have to upgrade after say 1 year, then entire ETL has to be changed. Now the new story starts, and that story starts from as if scratch, because entire table structure will get changed, and entire the format will get changed. So by that time you will be doing the job in source system, making a change in ETL and going into the destination. By the time destination need to be upgraded. So there is a always run between 2 or 3 systems, and service providers are different. One is here, another one is there, and both does not want to have a collaboration. How organization can be benefited out of the investment which has been made. All those circumstances, all those situations are there, but within those situations also banks are able to take the benefit of the data which they are holding, and which is resulting to have a more and more business. You can see the kind of channels which are getting used. So as a bank, all public sector banks, not only Union Bank of India, we are putting efforts in terms of garnering the benefits of analytics. So today we are able to identify that who are my potential customers to whom I can upfront give the pre-approved loans, to whom the data on their cash flows I'm able to identify, and making them an STP for the lending. So we have already made for few schemes. I may not be able to tell which schemes, but few schemes we have already made STP, wherein we are using the data analytics and the BRE has been put in place. So those kind of efforts are there, but a lot of job has to be done on this area. Thank you very much.
I think Mr. Praveen Kumar, a point very well said, and believe me, being a consultant on this particular topic for last 20 years, we were been kept busy, right? When 3GL ETLs moved to a graphic GUI-driven ETLs, and then you have to really rewrite it, rebuild it, drag and drop things started. Now we have gone back again to PySpark and Python code and whatnot, right? So that again, the trend is going back. So yeah, I mean, I think that technology change will happen, and there will be always struggle to find out that which technology and what solution we should adopt, so that at least next 5 to 10 years we at least not think on that way. We think of how to utilize the data and how to service our customers and that kind of point. But Makaran, coming back to you, I mean, you heard Mr. Atul Kumar and Mr. Praveen Kumar. What's a technology major's view in terms of addressing these kind of challenges?
Yeah, I think both are very, practical challenges, and I have seen them really very closely. I think the initial years were definitely learning for all as a community together, right? And how today I think it's completely unacceptable to have a 1 year of implementation roadmap, right? Most of them are probably down to 3 to 4 months maximum, right? So that has dawned to all of us, including the industry, the IT services provider, as well as, it reflects, Mukesh, the way you showed both the approaches, right? The first approach was clearly saying how we can have quicker ROI. So service providers are also slowly aligning to it. Specifically coming to Mr. Praveen Kumar's point, I agree that the core banking or even any other source system changes tends to have a ripple effect on the data lake or data analytic system. There are few ways to handle that, and I'm sure his team along with the partners are working on it. But you can de-alienate the source and the target code separately so that when changes happen only at the source system, maybe 40% or 50% of the code requires change in the source side. But the target table, the target transformation, the target schema, need not require a change. And of course, with the pipeline concept, even it is getting more smoother. But I completely agree. These are initial steps, how we can reduce and build the chunks in 3 or 6 months deliverables, how we can ensure that even if the changes are happening in the source system, either they are seamless or there is very minimal impact to data provisioning that is happening for the end users. So some capabilities are coming along, which makes it smoother, if not completely seamless. Okay.
Thanks, Makran. So I think with that understanding, let me also now probably understand where does your most of the time go today, right? I mean, if you had to start with Mr. Praveen Kumar on Union Bank of India, what is the understanding that yes, there is a data and we need to make use of it and we are building the infrastructure on top of it. But where is your most of the investments and your time go on, whether you're still working in terms of ensuring how BI democratization can be happen so your in-house reporting, BI reporting always goes smooth and self-service mode, or you're focusing more in terms of how a futuristic analytics can be done and how we can kind of start the entire growth channels to be powered by data, that perspective, or probably a third angle, which is more of a regulatory angle and compliance angle, ensuring that, you know what, I need to have a data and report so that all my regulatory queries are always in line. Where are your investments and where are your time actually going today?
Yeah, thanks, Mukesh. So always regulator and the regulatory requirement and the compliance have the number one priority. So that has to be on the investment will be there, whether it's a time or the from the finance or any more requirement will have a priority on that area. But after that, the most of the time is going to identify what are the things which we can do with this data. And once you start churning the data, identifying the various use cases, where all we can find the other mode of business. So in the beginning, I was mentioning that we have made some STPs. We have also started the BAPL or the pay now and buy now and pay BNPL, or the personal loans in the pre-sanctioned personal loans, using the analytics to onboard the customer on channels. So one of the use case, maybe most of the organizations must be using it. Say if an ex-customer is using the debit card, that means he is a tech savvy. He is a digital, acceptable. How can I push him my multiple products? If my own customer is using somebody else's channel, can I alert him that, boss, please use this channel, this is also available. He may not be knowing it. If my customer today use other than Union Bank ATM, I push him an SMS immediately that nearby this ATM where you have used, please log into my app. You will get other ATMs which are working within this locality or the area. So time is getting invested to identify the much more use cases, identifying the potential customer to reduce the operating cost for the bank in terms of why he should visit the branch, how I can give him the services, whether if he is more than he is coming into the senior citizen category, and if he wants to visit the branch and his demands are there, can I fulfill those demands through my the home visit facilities? So demand, based on the analytics, we are trying to make much more useful cases. So there is a separate vertical which bank has set up, which is advanced center of excellence which we have set up, analytics center for excellence which we have set up, which is headed by a general manager. So that department's job is only to identify these kind of use cases. Definitely, yes, there are senior level governance structure who will be sitting to identify based on the inputs which has been given. So that kind of investment from the time, from the data, how the data can be much more useful, how the data-driven business decisions can be there. That is being done. Even today, I can tell you we are giving much more information to the interview panel that where this person is getting fit for the next promotion. So that kind of analytics which we are using today. So investment is much more on that side.
Yeah, no, I think this is very very encouraging to hear. And as you correctly said, right? I mean, the regulatory support is always going to be priority number one. But I think in parallel, adoption of these analytics and identifying which analytics is actually going to help you is something which is important. So Mr. Atul Kumar, what's your view? How is Canara Bank doing this?
Yeah, I think like what was explained by Praveen, more or less public sector banks, more or less big banks will be on the same sort of line. Here the idea is very simple. If you see the age profile of PSU banks, most of the big banks, you will find that we have less millennials and less younger generation customers. And these are the customers whom we want actually. If you see, we have many customers who will say, sir, we are working in, we are customer of your syndicate bank or Canara Bank last 20 years, 15 years, because they started their journey with Canara or syndicate kind of bank and they have continued to bank with us. But the new generation is something which we really need to attract. And there, I think the whole PSU banks are concentrating, the large ones. And it's not an easy task, see, because as I said, though that technologically we are advanced, I think there are other aspects also I would like to point out. Let us talk about our HR. And it is very essential to talk about HR. See, my experience is that even today, most of the PSU bank are generally producing more of generalist, less of specialist. And today, it is an era of a specialist. For example, as Praveen rightly said about artificial intelligence and doing digital lending and giving offer an SMS to people who are using other ATMs. See, all this requires a lot of specialized skills in the banking sector, particularly in PSU bank. See, whereas an ICICI bank can sustain a highly technocrat person and give him a market-linked salary. Again, if it comes to a PSU bank, the kind of salary or the perks or the, I would say, the growth path he has is very, very limited. So he may not like to come there. And so here I will have a case in point, and I would like to explain what SBI is doing. And very rightly so. You must have read in newspaper just 2-3 days back. They have, they have taken a professional from the market, for their role of digital banking head and things like that. So I think the time has come when we really need a lot of specialist cadre people in the IT. For example, people network specialists, people who are good in database, people who are good in data lake, because you cannot really train a data lake kind of journey to a person, in 1 month, 2 months time. It takes years for him to understand, and then he needs to have a lot of background or technology. So here the problem in the HR of public sector today is that we are not having what we call as a job family kind of concept, where otherwise, like in State Bank is, I think, doing it even to some extent, even Bank of Baroda, I have seen that happening. A lot of specialists are getting recruited. A lot of specialist cadre. People at the engineering side, they are coming to the bank. Of course, we also have a lot of provisionary officers who are basically engineers, but they are not as effective as, people who are directly working on the IT sector and who comes to the bank. So I think that is another angle which I feel is very important, that, in today's generation or in today's world, like suppose if I have any problem with my eye, I will go to an eye specialist. If I have any problem with my heart, I will not go to an MBBS doctor. I will look for somebody with MD and heart specialist kind of a profile, and I will go to him. So similarly, I think IT is becoming so complex. PSU banks, the HR system also needs to align to that. And we need more and more specialist cadre people in the IT sector who can be useful in strengthening our IT system. More or less, you will find that our dependence on the vendor community is very high, which I feel, that is an area of risk, and that is something which delays the processes and which delays the implementation of IT system. The other thing I would like to point out also the procurement policy. See, today the procurement policy is most, structured towards getting into L1 pricing, which I feel is totally wrong. If you go to anywhere in the world, nobody follows this L1 game. And in fact, that matter has already been escalated to the highest level. And CVC is also working on, what we call as techno-commercial evaluation, because you cannot really compare an Apple, with a, small Google phone. They are totally different breed of phones which you are comparing. So I think that is another area which needs a big reform, because many times I have heard, I think Mr. Makaran will also watch for me, that, sir, the support of OEM is very limited here. So I cannot really help you much because, the system integrator has not factored the OEM support in this particular deal because the cost is going high. So as a result, what happens, we land up, executing our technology in a much slower pace and not properly the way it should be. I think that is these two areas which I will add apart from what Praveen just explained, that we need to really get into quality, for all the things what we buy, whether it is hardware, software, everything quality, that I think something which requires to be got into, and things are happening, but of course the pace is slow.
Yeah, no, I think very, very aptly said, Mr. Atul Kumar. I think, while we look for a best quality of technology, best quality of solutions, I think people who can well utilize it, people who can well make use of that is something also important, and that's also a focus area. Just quickly, Makaran, over to you. Now, we talked about different types of information need, right? Be it a regulatory, be it an analytics, and then we talked about people using those tools and technologies to kind of fulfill those information needs. How, from your perspective, how robust are the solutions and technologies available to kind of cater to these various kinds of information needs that we currently have?
Yeah, I think, good question, Mukesh. I think, as you must also be familiar, the technology landscape has changed a lot in the last 10 years. Great example Mr. Atul Kumar gave was about Power BI, for example. And I think we should start with the user in mind, right? Of course, getting the data is a challenge, I understand, but we should start with what the user wants and then work backwards, rather than getting the data and then figuring out kya karna hai uske saath. So if you look at the end usability, I think it has really, really changed, whether it is Power BI, there are others also, there are other tools also which are good enough. Similarly, the second area is around machine learning, right? That still requires some specialized capability around, statistics, etc. But that is also becoming more and more user friendly. So some capabilities where I can actually not need to know Python as much, right, are coming slowly to the fore. Third, earlier it was very costly, prohibitive to get into machine learning. Today, there are multiple open source solutions available, right? And those open source solutions can be made enterprise grade so that banks or other organizations can use. And the last piece from an end user perspective is AI, right? It is making the adoption in, for example, vision, for example, eKYC, for example, the service example I gave, that it is making us humans more smarter. So I think, while we can talk about the technological advancement, Mukesh, but from the context of the discussion, I would say the end user analytics, which is Power BI or BI kind of solutions, machine learning, which is becoming more and more English-like, and lastly, as I said, machine learning and AI are the three areas which are dramatically changed, which slowly will ensure that PSU banks also are able to make better use of the data that they have. So I'll probably summarize on those 3 points, Mukesh.
Great. No, I think this is good, because again, while we are kind of taking a very holistic view in terms of what are different things one really need while becoming a data-driven bank, I think we are at the top of the hour, but the way I want to kind of close it, go back to the actual topic of this entire discussion, which is the journey part of it, right? Journey of making a bank as a data-driven bank. And we talked about multiple things. We talked about different kinds of information that one needs. We talked about change in the technology happening. We talked about the capability building and skills that we have. We talked about the quality services that PSU banks can get. But I want to probably hear from both of the PSU bank panels in terms of what are the parting thoughts from the journey perspective, saying if a PSU bank tomorrow has to take this journey or they are in the way of journey, what are different things that one need to really look for to be a really successful data-driven PSU bank? Mr. Atul Kumar, probably we can start from you.
Okay. So I will just add that, yes, we are also into data, and data-driven banking is something which we understand very important, and we are onto it. That's why I gave an example of, Power BI dashboard. Let me tell you, earlier it was difficult for us, to provide data on a mobile phone, for example, on your iPad, and, while on the go, suppose that senior management is traveling in a car. So if he needs some data, somebody, he gets a car. Again, you talk about our COVID, during COVID time, he's sitting at home and he gets a call from his boss asking for some data. He was not able to do anything in the earlier system because he had to log into a banking system to get, MIS kind of report or a daily report, again, very cumbersome to generate or to see. Now, what is happening with Power BI kind of analytics solution? I'm just giving a name because we have implemented it and we are very happy about it. We find that, on mobile, I can see my ATM down. On mobile, the branch can see what kind of transactions are happening, who are their top 10 customers, top 20 customers. So it is becoming so effective and useful that nobody is going to PC logging in and seeing the reports, which earlier they used to do. So I find that kind of, analytics are really very, very helpful. And our MIS analytics department, we have a full-fledged department. They, generate this kind of reports on our requirement basis. And the best thing about this kind of tool is that it does not take months or years to implement, as in the case of data lake or data warehouse. It gets done in days, 2, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. You are able to get a complete view of this, anything you want regarding data. The other part I would like to talk about is, when it comes to data, is the quality of data, very, very important. And with good quality of data, your output also will be good. And see, ultimately, if you see, every PSU large bank is also trying to move from what we call as mass banking to class banking. We also want to cater to the needs of, millennials or people who are rich, who are high net worth. Earlier, the case was totally different. The government was, not worried about what kind of money we are making. They are more worried about whether we are, what kind of schemes of government we are popularizing or not, and whether we are getting into the, smallest era in the society and feeding them or not, giving them, Jan Dhan kind of accounts or not. So government was very, very focused on that area. But now that is behind us, I feel. Now even government has realized that they cannot provide a lot of capital to PSU banks. The only way is to self-sustainable model, which is the model of the future. So that is why you will see that every bank today is getting into data analytics in a big way. And according to me, data lake is another futuristic area where I feel all the banks will get into that. In fact, in E-Syndicate, Elsewhere Syndicate Bank, we started data lake journey, but somehow by the time the merger took place and then we got amalgamated in Canara Bank, now we have become Canara Bank. But still, I feel going forward in Canara Bank also, we need to get into this data lake journey in a big way. Because today, whatever analysis we are doing is our internal data, which may not be sufficient. So we need to have this universe data also, so that we know what people are buying, what people are doing, which kind of things people are purchasing, and from where they are purchasing. Maybe a software like we can compare and evaluate and then buy things. So I think we are getting into a whole lot of analytical journey. Pace may be slower, but I think. We are into it, and I think it is a very, very important part of banking today. You cannot work without analytics. That is what I would say.
Very, very nicely summarized, Mr. Atul Kumar. Mr. Praveen Kumar, any parting thoughts from your side in terms of about the journey towards the data-driven bank?
Journey is already started, and it's an ongoing journey on the data driven. In the beginning also I was mentioning certain areas. In addition to that, the data is being used for multiple decision making, not only for one or two types. In the lending, it is definitely there. And if I see this data driven, link it to the account aggregator. Now the future is how you are going to share your with the customer consent. The other banks can start using your data if you are not so proactive. So that kind of journeys are in pipeline, and banks has to be so proactive in terms of utilizing their own data for addition of the services to the customer. Because this is something in present scenario, we have the largest information available about the customer. We also have the information that where all he is transacting, what is the mode of the transaction which is happening. So earlier this was used that what all he is doing, how much the balance and all is. But now it is being used what all he is doing and how I can target that one. So that kind of data-driven decisions are in place. And yes, this is a journey. It will be an ongoing journey.
Great. I think these are very encouraging thoughts and very forward-looking thoughts, more in terms of how do we use data better for our own growth and our own advantage. I think let me conclude the panel discussion here, probably on the topic of entire journey of data-driven bank. I guess it was a very valuable thoughts shared. Ivan, back to you.
Thank you. Well, friends, that concludes the ET Unwired session titled Journey Towards Building a Data-Driven Bank, powered by Microsoft and PwC. A big thank you to all the members of this esteemed panel for taking time off from their busy schedules and sharing their valuable insights with us. I would also like to thank Mukesh Deshpande for doing a wonderful job of moderating this panel. It was great to listen and learn from these bright minds and influential leaders and hear them share cutting-edge insights on how PSU banks can leverage data to serve their customers better and be more competitive. I am sure we are leaving with some important takeaways. A big thank you to all of you for joining us for this session today, powered by Microsoft and PwC. For any feedback or queries, please write to us at contact@et-edge.com. I repeat, contact@et-edge.com. We look forward to seeing you all for more such sessions in future. This is your host, Ivan Rodrigues, signing off. Have a nice day. Stay safe.
Thank you.